Hi everyone, it's me, Tim. Today, let's talk about Fallout 2 and why I left it. I really think if you haven't, you should watch yesterday's video. There's a lot of context for this video in yesterday's video about how Fallout was a B-tier project. Now, I know I mentioned in that video that we had never really planned on a sequel, and by that, what I meant was there were no hooks in the original story or the setting or even the system mechanics. I mean, we hadn't planned on what would happen if the level went past 20. We just weren't thinking of a sequel. We were just trying to get Fallout 1 out the door. I think the only 2 times sequel even came up during development of Fallout 1 was during the naming meeting, where I even said Vault 13 isn't a good name because it doesn't make for good sequels, Vault 13-2 or more Vault 13 or Vault 14. And then again, when we finished the manual for Fallout 1, which was done months earlier because it has to go and be printed and then sent to the CD duplicator where we packaged in, we had discussed, we had made the whole manual and there was a page at the end that was blank because when everything got formatted, there was a blank page at the end. And Leonard Borarsky, the lead artist, was like, that cannot happen. So he went off, and I don't know who else he made it with, but they made an ad for the Garden of Eden creation kit, which was just a fun idea. And we threw it in the end, and that's like the very last page of the manual. So meanwhile, like I mentioned yesterday, a few months before we shipped Fallout 1, a whole new team started up on Fallout 2. It was Fred Hatch was running it. The designers were Matt Norton, a relatively new designer at Interplay, and Dave Hendy, who had done design work on Fallout 1. I'm just going to call it Fallout 1 to just differentiate when I'm talking about Fallout 1 and Fallout 2. They were off doing that. We were finishing Fallout 1, and you know things always get hectic at the end. I need to tell one more Fallout 1 story, and this one's super important because I'm going to loop back to it at the end of this video about why I left. So we had several deadlines that we missed. I believe Fallout was originally supposed to ship in the spring of 97. We were finally given a hard and fast deadline of mid-September 97. As that deadline approached, we knew we were not going to hit it. What happened is that week we were supposed to be done, we had discovered a crash bug, the worst kind of crash bug. It was completely random. Some people could play for a couple minutes and the game would crash. Other people like me, I could play for hours and never see it. Every crash report led back to random places in the code. And that's when we realized we had a memory overwrite bug. Some part of code was randomly writing into memory junk. And when that randomly wrote over data or code, the game would eventually fail in novel, unique ways. Well, everybody was super busy, but I did have a contractor on staff, Mark Harrison. So I asked Mark if he could look into it, and he would work on it all day. And then after my 8-hour day, I would join him for another 5 or 6 hours. We were doing 14-hour days on this. This was the last 2 weeks before Fallout 1 shipped. Mark invented this thing he called a bear trap, where we were collapsing in on the bug. He would write out a bunch of data into memory with a particular format to it. Then, a while later, he would check all those memory spots and make sure the formatting was untouched. Nothing should be writing into them. If something had, he knew that between the write and the check, something had stomped memory. And then he'd move one or the other, not both. We'd move one. And then if it still was a stomp still happened, then we knew it was somewhere in there. If it didn't happen, we knew it was in the place we moved past. So in that way, we honed in on what the bug was. This took weeks. It was very slow going. Remember, you could sometimes play the game for hours and not see it. During this time, Brian Fargo would show up in my office and scream at me. And I would try to be reasonable and say, I don't want this to happen either. No one wants this happening, but no one wants to ship a game that will crash randomly. And it wasn't like there weren't other bugs. They just weren't as high priority as this. In fact, we shipped with other bugs. After 2 weeks, one night, late at night, we had moved the bear claws so close, the bear traps so close, There was only one call, and we found it. We looked in the call, immediately saw what the bug was. Now, this is important, not for ego things, but again, for later. It wasn't my bug, and it wasn't Mark's bug. And the bug was so simple. It was literally a for loop that used a less than equal instead of a less than. So it occasionally went past, wrote data. And every time since we recompiled a new game every day, stuff moved around. What it wrote into on any particular build was different. Trivial to fix, fixed it, sent it to QA. They worked on it all the next day. Boom, we're good. Game ships. Whew, we're done. Now, like I said, Fallout shipped with a lot of bugs. So we immediately started working on a patch. So that's what the base team was doing. We were still exhausted. We had worked long days for months. We finished, went out. Everybody seems happy. I'm working on patches. The Fallout 2 team on their own had made a pitch over the last few months. They put together a design. Brian Fargo shows up in my office. He does not like the design. He said, I want you to do it. And I was like, I wasn't going to work on Fallout 2, remember? I wanted to do something else. He goes, I want you to do the pitch. Make me a pitch. And he leaves. Leonard Borarsky and Jason Anderson were right next door. Their office was right next door to mine. They came in and they said, we have a pitch. We thought of something. And I read it and it was really good. It was this giant war machine, this giant tank, bigger than a tank. It was like this rolling monstrosity. It was running around. It was going around the world map, destroying things. Because you know what? War never changes. So we gave that pitch to Brian. He comes into my office the next day. He liked it. But then he said, I even wrote this down. He goes, I don't see your hand in this. Did you write this pitch? And I told him, no, Leonard and Jason wrote it. He said, I want a pitch that you wrote. And I said, well, can I write one with them? And he said, yeah, I want you to make a pitch and I want you to be involved in the pitch. I want the humor. I want the Fallout-y vibe in this new one. I was like, okay. So the three of us sat down and wrote a pitch for Fallout 2. This pitch is a lot like what shipped, especially in the first few areas. In fact, like Arroyo, Klamath, the Den, Modoc, those are all very similar in our pitch to what actually shipped. Now, after that, it starts to vary from the design. And people have asked me specifically what changed in the original pitch of Fallout 2 from what eventually shipped. And it's you pretty much, I left at the end of January in 98 or very beginning of February. So I wasn't there. And so things varied towards the end. I know the Enclave was very different in our pitch than the end. There wasn't the president wasn't in power armor coming out to beat you up. There was supposed to be the spaceship in there that was being built. It was different. A big thing was the humor. I kind of rode the humor on Fallout. I was always watching things and making comments and specifically pushing back on things I thought were wrong tonally. Other people did that too. But my big thing was if you make a joke and someone doesn't get the joke because it requires cultural knowledge or something specific, they shouldn't even know there was a joke. Or there should be another part of the joke that's funny, but they don't get the joke at a deeper level. That apparently just went out the door when I did. Because Fallout 2 is full of jokes that are in your face. If you didn't see the movie, if you don't know the pop star, then you will know a joke was told and you're not getting it, which I didn't like. There was even fourth wall breaking. There's a whole area, the Den of Bad Memories. I don't know what it was. Broke the fourth wall. Now, we occasionally broke the fourth wall in Fallout 1, but we did it much more subtly, and I tended to push all those into random encounters because the random encounters were gated by luck. In fact, I probably should do a video about random encounters. Anyway, so that was a big difference in Fallout 2. So we made this pitch. Brian loved it. I thought that's where things would end, but it wasn't. He basically said, no, I just want you to run the project. Just take over. And sure enough, that's when I checked and Fred's producer promotion had not happened. And I'm like, ah. So I took over. This was around November. But I had already talked to Fergus about not being happy. So now let me tell you. So this is what happened over the next couple months. First of all, I was super exhausted. I was physically exhausted. I was mentally exhausted. My soul was empty from literally almost a year of crunch on Fallout 1. Then I was told that Fallout 2 had to be out by the following October in 98, meaning we're looking at a year of crunch, a whole game in less than a year. We're looking at a year of crunch ahead of us. And I don't know if I could do that. The other thing that started happening was Fallout shipped and did really well. Got great reviews. They were talking about revitalizing the RPG area, the RPG genre. Suddenly, everybody wanted in on this. People I had never talked before in my life were coming up to me saying, that was a great job we did on Fallout. I remember a marketing meeting I went to where, remember, my team is the one that made the box cover. Leonard and his artist made the box cover. It was great. Way better than what we'd had professionally done outside the company. So he made a great box cover for Fallout 2. In fact, one day I'll get him to describe it to you. It was a great box cover. So I go to a meeting where we're talking about Fallout 2 and the marketing and sales and materials that were going to be on it. And I bring that up. Somebody at the meeting, this woman I'd never, ever met before, ever, I don't know who she is, says, oh no, we already have an external company doing the box cover. We'll be using that. And I was like, what? And I look at the head of marketing and he just goes, and I'm like, well, we'll see about that. And she goes, no, it's been decided. So I walk out of that meeting and I just happen to go in the hallway and Brian Fargo's there. And he looks at me and goes, what happened? And I said, I just had a meeting and I found out decisions are being made on Fallout 2 that not only I don't like and don't agree with, but I wasn't even a part of. And he goes, what? Nobody should be doing that. What happened? And I told him about the box cover and he goes, do you want me to fire her? And I was like, no, I don't want you to fire her. I just want to be involved in these decisions. I don't understand. I said, I just wanted to go back to what Fallout was like. Just let us go aside and make a game for you. We just proved that we can do it. Why do we have to prove it again? Didn't matter. Everything happened. The Temple of Trials at the beginning of Fallout 2, we were mandated to put that in. We were told there had to be a tutorial. I said, can people skip it? No. What about on subsequent playthroughs? No. Not happy about this. I was already just exhausted. But then one thing happened. I've never talked about this, so here goes. After Fallout shipped, as is common at Interplay, the producer, me, is given a chunk of money and said, divide this money up for bonuses for your team. Now, this was always done very opaquely. And I'm like, nope, I don't want to do that. So I made a spreadsheet. Spreadsheet had everyone on the team. It had their base salaries, I know everyone's salaries, which corresponded to, like junior, staff, senior level. And then I had their start and end dates. So those were 2 of the 3 points I used. And those first 2 are completely objective. Your salary is a number. The number of months you were on the team was a number. Now, my salary wasn't the highest one on the list. Back then, in the late 90s, 3D artists were paid more than programmers. And I had come up on the programming track. And there were 3D artists making more than me. But no one had been on the project more than me. Because I was the only one on it for the first 6 months. And for the next 6 months, it was Jason Anderson and Jason Taylor. And Jason Taylor had left before we shipped. So the only person who came close to being on the team as much as me was Jason Anderson. But I put a third number in there, which is how much I think the person contributed uniquely to the project. And there was average and then a little below and a little above. Because this was subjective and I didn't want it to be a huge factor. But it was. So I started with everyone with 2s and then I went down the list and I went, okay. The question I asked, if this person hadn't been on the team, would it have been substantially worse? And there were people that I can honestly say they did good work, but I could have gotten other people to do that work. But there were some people, I'll name a couple, like Scott Everetts, our technical artist. He mastered our world map editor. If Scotty hadn't been on the team, we would have shipped with far less maps or maps of far worse quality. He was that good. He was one of the quiet powerhouses I mentioned yesterday. He went up. Leonard Boreski, I mentioned him a lot. Leonard was the one who thought of the whole, I want Fallout to be what the 50s thought the future would be like. That one idea not only informed our art, but it involved the tone of the game, the ads, the music, everything that I think people love about Fallout. I think stems from that one brilliant idea. Leonard's went up. There were a few other people, though, who I lowered their number. And I tried to be objective about it. There was someone who didn't finish a huge chunk of their work for stuff that had to be done. We had to have other people, sometimes other people from other departments, come in, finish his work, because it was not stuff we could cut, for him. So I lowered that. There were a few others, but that was the important one. Because what happened was, I went to Fergus with this spreadsheet. We talked about it. He pretty much agreed. We both signed off on it. And I gave it to HR. These are the bonuses that will be given out. That was the last time, by the way, I shouldn't be clear on this. That's the last time Fergus or I ever saw that bonus sheet. A few weeks later, new pay period. Now that probably happened in late November, early December. So now we're approaching, it was either Christmas or early January. I don't remember. My notes don't have a date on this. I get my bonus check. It's small. It's small. Now, from what I remember, I was expecting one of the highest bonuses because project leader, producer, lead programmer, designer, been on the team, been the only one on the team from the very beginning. Nope. I dropped to somewhere in the bottom third. That hit at a bad time. I was already not happy, was tired, was on Fallout 2. I just wanted to do something else. I went to HR. She said, yep, that was a bonus. And I said, that's not what I signed. And that's not what Fergus, my boss, signed. You've made a mistake. She goes, there's no mistake been made. And I'm like, well, we got to do some kind of investigation because I think there was a mistake. I don't know if you did this. So she finally said, no, Fargo did this. So I went to Brian and I asked what happened. And he said, the delay of the game from that crash bug, when it happened and when Mark and I fixed it, he asked me whose bug it was. And I didn't tell him. I didn't think, I was like, you know what? That's not important. We found it. We fixed it. It wasn't done intentionally. There was no malice. He said, no, I want to know. I demand to know. And I was like, no, I'm not going to tell him. I'm not going to tell you. I said, I'm the project lead and I'm the lead programmer on this. You don't get to know. And he said, okay. So when the bonuses came in, he reduced mine twice. Once he said he didn't agree with me reducing the bonus of one of the people, so he gave that person part of my bonus. But the other reason, the big reason, was he said, you didn't tell me whose bug it was, and you said you wanted responsibility for it, so take it. Big reduction in my bonus for that. And I just looked at him and I was like, is this supposed to encourage me in any way to work on Fallout 2? Is this... He goes, yeah, encourage you to do better next time. I went home and I drafted my resignation. I sat on it for about 2 weeks. Came in one morning, told Leonard and Jason, I'm quitting. Went to Fergus, gave him the resignation letter. I gave him the option. I can leave that day. I can give him 2 weeks, or I can give him to the end of the month. He chose end of the month. Said I had to go talk to the executive producer. I did. She said people were going to be pissed. And I was like, okay, I cannot do it anymore. It's all in the letter. I'm done. I go back to my office. I've been away from my office now for about 2 hours. I go back. Leonard and Jason took my letter, copied it, and resigned as well. I can tell you people weren't happy. People on the team weren't happy. Brian wasn't happy. Fergus wasn't happy. But there was just no way I could stay. I got beaten down. All I can tell you is I made an IP from scratch that I had always believed in from the very beginning, that no one else had believed in except the team. No one external had believed in until right near the end. And then my reward for that was more crunch, more responsibility that I didn't want, tons of interference from people who had ignored us for the last 3 years, and a reduced bonus to get me motivated. I was done. So let me just say this at the end, though. I don't want any of you to change your opinion on Fallout 2 because of this. If you like Fallout 2, you liked it. The same way I tell people, if you play a game that you don't like, just go play something else. If you like Fallout 2, play it. Enjoy it. A really good group of people worked on it. I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't. That's sometimes how development goes. So that's what happened with me and Fallout 2, and that's why I left before it was done.